Good evening. My name is Dr. Kenton Slaybaugh, and tonight we're going to look at the second lesson in our series based out of Ephesians chapter 4, 1 through 16, called Growing Up into Christ. And tonight we're going to look at the fact that grace has been given. It says in Ephesians 4, starting in verse 7, "But to each of us grace was given according to the measure of Christ's gift. Therefore, he says, when he ascended on high, he led captivity captive and gave gifts to men." Now this, he ascended, what does it mean? But that he first descended into the lower parts of the earth. He who descended is also the one who ascended far above all the heavens, that he might fulfill all things. For an icebreaker tonight, describe an experience in which grace was extended to you. You were given favor that you did not deserve, and maybe it was a time extension on a project that you just couldn't quite get done, but the person who you were accountable to or responsible to gave you some extra time. Or maybe you hurt someone relationally. You didn't necessarily mean to, but you were forgiven. And maybe you forgot to do something you promised to do, and yet the person had grace and extended that to you. What was it like to be given a second chance? What did you do with the grace that was extended? So describe a time when you experienced grace, if you have, and some people haven't. But talk about that. What was it like? Relate your experience if you're comfortable doing so. And you can press pause and I'll be back in a moment. Grace can be defined as the power to overcome. Each of us has been given grace as a gift. It's a favor that we do not deserve, but God gives it to us anyway as an expression of His love towards us. The picture that Paul describes here is that of a conquering king that is returning from a victorious battle. He has descended into the battle, and now he is ascending in victory. And as he comes into his people, he is parading his captives before him. They are welcoming him, they're clapping, and during this procession, he's giving gifts from what he has taken in the battle to the people that he's coming back to. This is what Jesus did for us. He defeated death, and he comes and he gives gifts. Our King Jesus is victorious over death. And he's victorious over every work that the enemy wants to defeat us with. The battle was won on the cross and was finalized in his resurrection. Because he, Christ, is victorious, we can be victorious because he has given us the grace to overcome any and every work of the enemy in our lives. There's no addiction so strong that God's power can't break it. There's no situation too grave that God can't turn it around. There's no sin so despicable that God can't forgive. No hurt so deep that God can't heal. That's our God. And He's given each of us the grace to be able to overcome those situations in our lives. Overcoming is something God has given us, but it's also a process. We have to do our part. We have to make the decisions necessary to hold the ground that God has given us and advance into all that God has planned for us. Sometimes we stumble and we fall short, but God's grace is there to see us through. It's God's grace that gives us that second chance. And even a third chance. And maybe you're not like this, but sometimes I've needed a fourth chance until we can get it right, until we overcome. Our goal is to be that overcomer and to enter into the fullness of life and ministry, all that God has for us. He will never leave us. He will never forsake us. He'll never reject us in this process. His desire is our victory. We are secure because we're in Him. And with His grace, we will overcome. So tonight, 2 questions for you to discuss as a group. Is it hard for you to accept grace? Is it hard for you? Because some of us, because of how we were raised, expect punishment instead of grace. And so God extends grace instead of judgment. He gives us a second chance. Are you okay with a second chance? Because sometimes that's hard. Second question, is it hard for you to give grace to others? Do you look for revenge? Or do you look to place blame? Does somebody have to be responsible? Are you willing to extend forgiveness? Extend a second opportunity? Or does somebody have to pay for the wrong that they have committed towards you? That is also our tendency as human beings. And yet that's not the way Jesus has dealt with each one of us. So talk about these questions tonight. Is it hard for you to accept the grace of God? Is it hard for you to extend grace to others? For ministry time tonight, after you've discussed the questions, allow time for the Holy Spirit to minister to the needs within your group. Whatever the Holy Spirit has brought up in your time together, minister to those things. Gather around people, pray over them, put your hands on their shoulder or on their back, and simply pray what the Holy Spirit gives you to pray with every single one of you participating that feel comfortable. Thank you for listening tonight. Bless you as you minister one to another, and I will see you soon.